If somebody is listening to this and they're in your shoes, hopeless, helpless, I've tried it all. I don't like what I see in the mirror. I don't like who I am. The way I'm acting and behaving feels out of my control. It's not aligning with my values. I just do not like the person that I'm being in anyway. But I really don't think that anything else is going to help because I have truly tried it all. And I don't trust myself, even if I thought I did find the miracle to fix all of this. What would you say to them?
I would say that the search stops here with the Satori method. This is I there's gonna be plenty of other books that you can read and plenty of other therapists that you can talk to and plenty of other people out there that wanna take your money and wanna try to help you. But I don't think that there's anything out there that is so powerful and that does have just so many of these components in it. I would say that there's not an area of my life that hasn't touched the mom that I am, the friend that I am, the coworker that I am, the wife that I am, the woman that I am to me. It's all been impacted in a positive way. What really brought me here was initially I just wanted to lose weight. I was looking for somebody to help me kind of like a nutritionist. That's really what I was looking for, is someone to help me maybe just align with my personal body and not just some kind of sticker diet fad that you get so often. And when I reached out, the thing that was curious from your point of view that really kind of resonated with me was that you had mentioned breaking the cycle. And that really describes my life up until this point, is this just giant cyclic like issue where I solve seemingly the issue on the surface for a small amount of time and then end up going back into my old ways. So nothing is ever permanent. And that's really why I decided to work with you and decided to try this work instead, is because I was looking to break that cycle and I was looking to I guess do a little bit more root cause analysis and get down a little bit below the surface to really understand what was causing the things to happen that was causing to happen. Um, when I think about even just 5 months ago, I was in a bad place. I was very, I would say even broken, disappointed in myself. A lot of self, I wouldn't even call it hate. I would call it loathing. I didn't, I really just couldn't even handle myself. I couldn't handle the way I looked in the mirror. I couldn't handle the way I felt about myself, even not looking in the mirror. I couldn't handle the way I was behaving, my thought process, like you name it. I just hated all of it about me. So just a very dark place. Um, and it's kind of crazy to think that that's where I was and where I am now, because I'm in a much different place now.
Yeah, that's a really incredible description, but it's incredibly common for the people that come to this work, and it's a product of lifetimes of doing the wrong thing or the thing that we're told to do and going through so many cycles of defeat and like you said, not able to really get that change. It wears on your self-esteem. It wears on your mental health, your physical health, like right down to a cellular level, it wears on you. And I think that state that you just described probably resonates with so many people that are gonna hear this because it is like the end result of just a lot of work that seemed to not matter, and we're back at square one, and that cycle part, I know what that feels like. I know a lot of people knows what that feels like, and it's such a heavy space to be in of just like, "Okay, well, I've done everything, so there's nothing even left, and this is as good as it gets, so this is how I feel for sure." So I feel like you summed that up really powerfully in a way that resonated a lot. What would you say was the first thing you started to notice that shifted that? Maybe in our process or in our work, you were in that state to start. If you can remember back to a moment or maybe a lesson or a tool or something that was, this feels different. This is shifting. This really is not the same thing that I've always done.
Yeah, so you'll probably remember when our very first session together, we kicked things off with me telling you that I was very apprehensive and that I very much did not believe that less was more. I did not I just had my reservations around this work as a whole. And as the skepticism started to kind of I allowed that to kind of come away, and I just started to put in the work, then that's when I really started to notice just subtle changes. Now I can't really think I think that there were several like very big moments, but for me, if I just look at the time as a whole, it's more of just kind of a subtle change in the way that I react to a situation. So, a situation that would normally completely push me over the edge, like from an anxiety perspective or from a mood perspective, the way that I would allow those things to impact me started to be different. And my ability and bandwidth to navigate through challenging times with what felt like a clear head started, that clearness and clarity started to become more more present.
Yeah.
And I I mean, my husband, about 3 months into this, he actually made a comment to me about how the way that I was reacting to him and to my family and everything that was going on this last summer. He said, "I've never really seen you, react with such a sound mind or such a cool head or just so calmly." And it's not to say that I'm like, popping off like a crazy person. Maybe sometimes I am, but but he made that comment and I was like, yeah, I feel that way as well.
I love hearing the people in proximity and their feedback because there's nobody that knows you better and feels the experience that you're going through more than your partner, your children, like the people in that close proximity. And so I think there's something just really special about a mother investing in this work for herself, but then it also has this like residual overflow effect to her family in such a powerful way. And the other thing is something that's I think worth noting is especially for women, we're not encouraged to express anger or frustration or rage. We all know that literally the society that we live in we don't have an outlet for that. For a lot of women, it's not the overt outburst or the flipping out or the hysteria because we've learned to internalize that. But it doesn't mean that it's actually not there. It doesn't mean that we don't have this like bubbling up frustration and anger and rage. And there's so much research that points to repressed anger as one of the most powerful dynamics that fuels illnesses like cancer and autoimmunity. And I think we have this concept of anger as it only exists if it's outwardly expressed. We don't have this awareness of if I felt anger or frustration and I didn't have a positive way to discharge it, but I suppressed it, it's still anger. It's just not expressing. And I don't think people understand how much effort and energy expenditure that requires to do that. But when that internalized anger and those emotions get nurtured and released, it's really, really powerful. And then the other thing I wanted to note, because I think this is important, that I remember that first session. And what I love about this work, specifically tools like tapping, is it doesn't try to bypass any feeling, including someone like you getting on your first call with me and saying, I don't really know if I think this is going to work, you know? And so, like, what we did in that very first session is that's totally valid. Like, that's totally valid. Let's tap on that. Let's jump right into the tool with this feeling and honor that as real and legit. And then it dissolves. Like you said, it faded away in a way that was powerful that then allowed you to experience it. But if I had tried to just bypass that as your experience and your real valid emotion, it would have kicked back even more. And I think that's what happens a lot in healing spaces as well, is it's a lot of force. And I think the skepticism and doubt is a really powerful emotion and feeling that deserves every bit as much acknowledgement as any other emotion. So moving on through kind of the process, what are some other things that you feel like on a fundamental, deeper layer, like maybe lifetimes of patterns or thoughts or just the way you viewed the world, even perspectives, did you notice that started to shift for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I think one thing that I do want to say is this work has really allowed me to actually show up and live in alignment with my values. And so when I first came to you to work with you, That was, I think, the biggest thing that was happening. If you wanted to go down to the bottom level, is that the way I was showing up and the way that I was behaving and all these things that I was doing was not in alignment with what I truly wanted to be. But I had gotten to the point where I didn't even trust myself really to make the right decisions. And I didn't even trust that I knew what that really wanted to be, defining that actually meant. And my perspective has completely changed on that. And now that I have just this small amount of time in, I feel so much more aligned as a human with my values and who I want to be. And not only do I have clarity on who and what that actually means, but I also have clarity on how those actions show up and how the physical side of that actually makes its way. It's emotional, it's mental. And so those three things are just those they're becoming this whole mind, body, soul experience, and it's a true, kind of a unit. And I will just share, like, last night, one thing that I just kind of noticed out of the blue as walking by the mirror. I haven't had a moment where I've looked in the mirror. Sorry. Sorry. I haven't had a moment where
It's
looked
definitely
in the
it's
mirror
hard.
and I've hated myself, and I'm not even sure.
Yeah. Wow.
And that, like, Uh, it's been, I don't even know how long. It's been weeks, maybe months since I've, looked and had some sort of negative feeling. And not to say that it's like sunshine and rainbows, like I don't like every part of my body, but I don't have just this immense hate. I don't have this just these immense negative feelings towards me, not at me. But I just thought that was crazy. I just noticed it last night of all times. But
Yeah.
my perspective really is just more positive, and I just feel, before it was a lot of like feeling kind of doomed, like I was just destined to always live in these places of negativity and live in these dark places, and that's not how I feel anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So incredibly powerful. And I got the full body chills, the truth chills, I call them, because as many realms of trauma and healing that I love, the relationship that a woman has with her body and goes through living in our modern world is one that is such a deeply ingrained part of my story and fuels so much of my passion of bringing this to women who struggle with that. And it is the thing that is inescapable 24/7 when we are at war with our bodies. And it is, again, there's all these other elements and components of ourselves and our identity and our family and our work and our all these things. But it's like this is the one thing. And if we are out of harmony with that one thing and do not feel at home inside the vessel that we live in, it is the most tragic thing that is a product of, again, of a society and what it told us we should do, and then put us at war with ourselves at such young ages. For so many women I work with, we started that journey so early. I went on my first diet when I was 9 years old because my dad set me down. Like when I sat down to dinner, he said, "You're getting kind of fat, Holly." Poor wound, changed the trajectory of my life. And I know exactly that feeling that you just described, where that harmony starts to happen, where you're like, this is actually my home. This is my home. This is a sacred space. This is something to be loved and nurtured. And there's so many components of that. So I felt that in my bones. And I think, again, a lot of people that are probably listening to it know what that feels like to be at war. And then the war happens internally on a cellular level, a physiological level, a mental level. And the other thing I want to highlight about what you said that I think is really important is I think a lot of the healing space has this goal of you should love yourself. The mental health space says that, the healing space puts this as a goal. But what I think gets missed is that's a hard jump, especially if you've had a lifetime of dieting and that whole collection of beliefs and thoughts and traumas that fuel that dysfunction in your life. It's a very hard jump to just be like, okay, well, just love myself. And I tried to do that for a very long time, and I was like, "It's not working, like, why cannot just jump there?" And what you mentioned about the trust, I think that is so important because in this work, going back to the first session we had where you said, "I don't think I believe in this." That very moment that I reflect to you and then you start reflecting back to yourself that it's okay for you to feel how you feel, you start trusting yourself. You're like, "Okay." And that's what that starts to teach you, and when you start to trust yourself, that starts different actions and behaviors, and then the love starts building from that. But that trust, I think, just gets fundamentally missed as such a huge core part. It's like the bridge from where you are to where you wanna go, and we can't just jump across the Atlantic Ocean and arrive there, and I think that's what a lot of approaches to healing, they just tell you to do this thing, and you're like, "I do not have a one-way first class ticket to that side of the planet, that's so far away." And I know, again, that was a lot of my experience that led me to go to deeper layers is this idea that we should just love ourselves when we have all this pain and this trauma and this disconnect from our body. We can't love something that we're disconnected from and that we don't trust. And those are the missing pieces. So I think that the way you stated that profound moment last night, and then what you had said before that, beautifully illustrated that part of the process and why it's so powerful. So just thank you for sharing that. What an incredible thing to experience and have that light bulb moment of like, wow, I can't remember the last time I had that thought. On the journey of trust, I want to lean into that a little bit because is there something that you remember specifically that shifted that part for you or a breakthrough, a kind of epiphany? I just want to dissect that one a little bit with how that manifested for you, the lack of trust, and then when that started to really shift when you started to trust yourself more.
I think really, I think it's several things, but the thing that comes to mind just very first when you ask that question is my ability to understand or differentiate the fact that my feelings don't actually mean that's who I am, or that my mood doesn't define me, or that I can have these thoughts, but that doesn't actually mean that I don't have to attach a story to everything. I don't have to attach meaning to everything. And that fluidity that you kind of brought up earlier, that giving myself permission to just say, I get to be both ways. I get to be here and I get to be here. And it just kind of depends on where I'm at in my cycle or where I'm at or what's going on around me. Those, showing up one way doesn't mean that's who I am forever. And
Yeah.
when I started to, that is still something that I am working on, but I feel much more confident not assigning this giant definite this giant meaning, this giant explanation, and then also attaching a story and identification to that as well, and just allowing those to be things that sit and that are, and that's okay, but that doesn't mean that that's who I am.
Yeah, that's really powerful. And what would assigning meaning kind of look like for you before? Was there sort of a pattern and a story that you defaulted and put through everything?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Just, your brain likes to look for validation or look for confirmation for anything. So if I, before, basically, I had decided that I was worthless and that I was not capable and that I would never get to wherever it was, any goals, because I had just, I mean, leading up to seeing you, I had just complete repeats of trying something, failing, trying something, failing, trying something, failing, and all really within circumstances that were within my control. And so I really focus on that too. Like I could have done better, but I didn't. And that was the pattern that I was stuck in, as us just defining myself as someone that was not ever gonna be able to do it. And so assigning that meaning, like, yes, I have found this confirmation. I found the validation that I'll never be able to do it because look at my track record. Like, look at my history. I have nothing to show for everything that I have tried to do up until this point.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so incredibly true, on a neurological level that our brains. It's literally called the RAC, the reticular activating system. I always, when people say that, they experience that. And so I always love telling them that the science backs them up. That's the part that's fun for me, is saying this is not just in your head. It's not a moral defect, a personality defect. This is what's happening in your brain on a neurological level. It's just a well-known concept that when you don't reach the goal, it hits your confidence. But we weren't told that, we were sold a lie and given, again, a futile plan to get there, and that was gonna continue to erode our confidence, and I think that that is one of the worst things. The physical impact of the dieting and beauty industries, and that's a whole separate thing, but the emotional and self-worth aspect that it hits in women is that it makes you feel worthless and not capable, those 2 words. And what does someone who feels worthless and not capable show up as? Like you said, they're looking for everything's gonna fit that story because that's the data that you have, but it's false data. And that's, I think, the power of when you start to realize that you can start creating different data and approaching it differently and then having wins and successes, then you start to feel really in the driver's seat. It's the same compounded interest, but it's in a positive way. You start looking for all the positive ways you're showing up and you're winning, and I think that's a powerful part of the tools and stuff in this work as well, is it gives you that tangible data of like, "Look how I'm showing up for myself. Like, look how I'm doing it. Like, look at the things that are changing," and you get to continue to see that. So, I think that self-trust and that narrative part is really important because those are built off of our imagination really having a poor perspective of us. It's like, "You're worthless, you're never gonna do this, there's no hope," and then it just keeps telling that to us on repeat. Again, we can't sit back and wonder why we don't feel good about ourselves. Going to looking at a few of the specifics on the tools, I wanna just go off script here for a second and play into that whole doubt hesitation. Was there ever a moment that there was a tool introduced or a concept that your initial reaction was like, what?" But you did it and then you were either shocked or really had a different perspective on the other side of it?
Fully, I think pretty much everything that you have told me to do. Not just being honest with you, like that's goes. I didn't do any kind of free work, if you will, coming into our first session, and you had talked with me about EFT and tapping, and so those 2 phrases really was the extent of the research. I didn't do any research, and so having me tap through the points the first time, I was like, "What in the world?" What was interesting is within just a week of doing that, my body was craving that more.
Yeah.
And the ear pulls, I'll never forget the ear pulls. Like, I'm like, what? I mean, I just, at that point, I trust you. And we had built that and I trusted myself too to to at least try it. And every time the neuro drills, the tapping sessions, what I will say about the tapping sessions though, that I really appreciate is that as you mentioned earlier, that you can kind of have the bad feelings and the good feelings. The tapping sessions have never been like this. Not we're acknowledging the full spectrum. The full spectrum is always included. I think that part of it is really powerful as we kind of start through and we talk about this is the crap that I'm feeling. This is the negative. This is the stuff that so often I'm pushing down and I'm not allowing to kind of just exist. And then working our way through to kind of shift that. Like, let's see, here it is. It's fine. It's here. That's fine. But how do we kind of shift that? And that I mean, everything has been completely brand new for me, but everything has also helped me in different ways as well.
Ugh, I love it. I love the raw honesty because you're actually in a unique position that we weren't connected before. Like, a lot of times I've had a waiting list for years and I had stepped away from private practice. And a lot of times people really had a concept of my work, or at least they had listened to a podcast or something. But you just got dropped straight in and you made that decision that this is worth trying, even with that doubt and that skepticism, which is totally normal. But you didn't have any prerequisite of what to expect. And so I think that that's a testament to you, though, and your willingness to show up, because this is such a two-way street. Even in my initial paperwork, it says very clear, like, this is a joint collaborative process. I've never wanted to have this like guru complex of, I'm going to fix all your problems. I'm like, we are going to go on this journey together. You're going to give me feedback. I'm going to give you tools and we're going to walk this journey together. And I think when people start to understand that it's not this force, do it my way, this is just about me having all the answers, they realize it's actually led by them. That helps build that trust too. And they know that they can lean on the support, but they know ultimately they're the ones that are navigating and leading the charge. And so the doubt and the skepticism and the WTF moments, those are all real and valid, especially if you've never heard of this stuff. And to give listeners kind of an idea, just if they're brand new to this, I draw upon like 10 different fields of science and have trained in a lot of different things that are typically like their standalone modalities. EFT is generally its own thing. Somatics is its own thing. Applied neurology, psychology, there's all these different things. But in my own journey, I found I needed a little bit of all of them. And that's what I've infused into the Satori method. So it's some things that may make you like, okay, I thought healing was talking about your feelings, or I thought somatics was just about feeling your body, but it's such an infusion. And I think it's really powerful when you can just show up and have this, well, I've tried everything else and it wasn't working. So the very least I can do is try this, even though it feels weird. I'm like tapping and saying these statements, again, the WTF moments. But I think the thing that I love about tapping the most is that you almost cannot deny from like the first time the way your body feels. It's such a quick, easy, dynamic. It's really almost miraculous. Again, the science backs it up, but what it actually does in the brain and body is so profound that if you just do it once, that kind of gives you the evidence to at least be curious to keep going. And then when you see the things changing over time, it's just like you can't really deny it, and that's why I'm obsessed with EFT, and I think it's such a powerful medium. But the neuro drills and the tongue circles, again, there's all these other things that if you don't really understand what's happening on a nervous system level, of course they feel weird. Of course you're like, "What is this doing?" But you feel the difference, and that's why this stuff is so powerful. If somebody is listening to this and they're in your shoes, hopeless, helpless, I've tried it all. I don't like what I see in the mirror. I don't like who I am. The way I'm acting and behaving feels out of my control. It's not aligning with my values. I just do not like the person that I'm being in any way. But I really don't think that anything else is going to help because I have truly tried it all and I don't trust myself, even if I thought I did find the miracle to fix all of this. What would you say to them?
I would say that the search stops here with the Satori method. This is I there's gonna be plenty of other books that you can read and plenty of other therapists that you can talk to and plenty of other people out there that wanna take your money and wanna try to help you. But I don't think that there's anything out there that is so powerful and that does have just so many of these components in it. The work that I've been doing and that I've been able to kind of achieve with myself is I don't even fully understand it necessarily. I don't, but I know and can feel that it has worked and that it is working and I'm changing for the positive in every single day. And so I would say don't give up, but be ready to do some work. Let's, there's not you can't put a price on the kind of healing that comes from what I have experienced in the last 5 months. I never ever in my life thought that I would be where I am today. I never I mean, and the like my thing is because I'm always, looking for ways to bring others along is like I just want to help others get here too. So if my voice or if my story kind of resonates with you, like just try it. Just try it.
One final question that I have in closing is, going back to the beginning, you mentioned you were looking for a nutritionist. Like that was the spot where you're like, maybe I'll find the nutritionist that's going to give me the plan and it needs to be customized, but that's going to get me to my goal, right? You've obviously had a fundamental shift on realizing what you needed was something completely different. How many areas of your life do you feel like the Satori method has impacted and this work has impacted that nutrition would have never, ever been the vehicle to arrive to?
Yeah, I would say that there's not an area in my life that hasn't touched the mom that I am, the friend that I am, the coworker that I am, the wife that I am, the woman that I am to me. It's all been impacted in a positive way.
Yeah.
I a diet would not solve for it wouldn't even it wouldn't even scratch the surface.
Yeah. Yeah. When you go to ground zero, when you go to the base foundation and you look at those core things that have been ignored your whole life and you're able to release and offboard and acknowledge and honor yourself in a way that, again, especially as women, we've been trained and conditioned to disregard our entire lives. That is more powerful than any size that you could be, any six pack that you could have, and anything that you were going to do to get in a certain size or to exercise a certain way is going to be so much more powerful when you have that core physiology that's healthy and stable and confident and grounded. I think when we have that perspective shift, then the way we approach nutrition is a lot different as well. So that if we do need to cut a certain food out or we do need to eat a certain way, it's not coming from this place of force and conflict and, again, at war with your body. It's coming from a place of harmony and intuition and trusting, and those couldn't be further from each other. You could eat the same thing, but those are 2 very different physiological places to come from, and the physical state of our bodies when we are eating matters, and there's so many different components. So, I don't talk about nutrition a lot, but I love that this conversation allowed us to reference it in this beautiful way that's so important to me. It's a big part of your journey, and I know this is a struggle that millions upon millions of women have gone through, and so I just want to thank you and acknowledge you for showing up and sharing your voice and your story and journey, how this work has helped heal those things that were such a long standing part of your journey. And I really hope that other women are inspired that it doesn't have to look the way they've been told. Again, they've been sold a lie that was never going to get them to that peace or that self love if they didn't do the other work. And then I actually have one final question because you did mention you got to show up and do the work. But I think sometimes when people think about the healing journey, they get a little overwhelmed because if they have a lot of dysfunction or trauma or pain, they think the work is going to be this big, massive thing. And they'll be like, maybe when my kids graduate, or maybe when this happens, it feels too much. How would you speak to that about the ease of implementing this work into your daily life and handling it being a busy working mom?
Yeah, I was very skeptical at the lack of time and from my perspective when we first started that I would be putting into this. And
Yep.
so that piece alone was just like because I was expecting to have to shift and we're talking hours a day and we're talking journaling and we're talking that's where I was at with that. So when I 3 weeks in, I'm like, this is it. This is all I'm doing. This is for real. But it has been extremely easy to add it into and it's really helpful to the advice that you've given over the journey to not necessarily have to add anything at all. You're just stacking together. And so something that you're already doing day to day, you just are also doing this as well. And so there is some additional time, but it's not hours a day. It's just minutes a day. And if those minutes are intentional, then they will do what they need. That will do what it needs for you, and the work will be, successful in those couple of minutes. Someone who came to you a little bit, not a little bit, just very overwhelmed and with no bandwidth. That's really a great way to put it. The brain fog was real. I just really didn't think that I could handle having much more. It was my natural state to say, this is not enough and it's not going to
Yeah.
because it's not I need more, but really I didn't. And that has been another very beautiful piece of this work is that it hasn't overwhelmed me. It's just done the opposite of that. It's just
Yeah.
been a couple of minutes, maybe twice, maybe 3 times a day that I'm just tuning in and has been transformational.
To be honest, that's my favorite part about the work too. I'm busy. I'm an entrepreneur. I do a million different things. And I think a lot of women that come to this work are used to doing that too. They're moms, they're entrepreneurs, they're career women. They are juggling it all. They don't need to be told that they need to do a 5 hour meditation and morning routine and 42,000 steps to feel better. It's like a 30-minute session once a week and a couple minutes throughout the day. That's why I absolutely became infatuated with specifically the neurology part and then the tapping. I'm like, "This can happen in a couple minutes, and it can be so profound." A lot of the things that are sold out there are so extensive, and there's so much. I think that pushes people away from the healing that they could have because it's not achievable. Just like the extreme dieting and nutrition world, it's not feasible, a lot of the things that are being sold to people. So I think this sets women up for success because it is doable long term. I hope everyone listening, they are inspired, they are empowered, and that this resonated with them as well and helped them feel not so alone and maybe not so helpless. So thank you again. And thank you everyone for tuning in.